Have you ever brought a knife to a gunfight? Or maybe sometimes you had to shoot from the hip or to stand your ground. And sometimes, of course, it's time to bite the bullet and bury the hatchet. Could you understand what I'm talking about? If not, then stay tuned because this is Business English Idioms for War. There's lots of idioms that we use that are kind of war related. So we'll go through several of them and maybe you'll learn something. Stay tuned. I'm Timothy Barrett, and this is the For Business English Rundown. This is the show for people all over the world who want to improve their professional communication skills in English. Today we're going to talk about business English idioms for war, related to war. Let's get started. All right, to stand one's ground, stand your ground, stand my ground, or stick to your guns. Both of these idioms mean basically not to give up. I'm fighting over something, I'm going to stand my ground, or I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm not surrendering, I'm not walking away from the fight, I'm going to stand my ground, stick to my guns. To ride shotgun. So if you've ever seen American movies or TV shows, as they're walking to the car, maybe there's 3 or 4 people walking to the car, and one of the people says shotgun. So what does that mean? Well, to ride shotgun means to sit in the passenger seat next to the driver. So I think this goes back to like the Wild West. If you see the Wild West cowboy movies, you'll see the stagecoach. Sometimes they would have 2 people, on front controlling the horses. The rest of the people would be inside the coach. But one person would be, controlling the horses. The other would be riding shotgun. He'd have a shotgun in his hand in case there were bandits or someone coming after the stagecoach. He was ready with that shotgun. So to ride shotgun means to sit next to the driver. And usually that's probably except for the driver's seat, that's probably the best seat. So there's a tradition in America, if you call shotgun, then you get to sit, in that seat. Shot across the bow. So this is a naval term. The bow is the front of the ship. And historically, you might send signals or even try to yell. Nowadays they'd use the radio. But sometimes maybe they're ignoring you. Now maybe they're ignoring you on purpose. They hear you, they see you, but they're going to ignore your commands. So what do you do to get their attention? You shoot across the bow. You don't shoot at them because maybe they didn't hear you. Maybe they don't know that you're there telling them to do, turn back or whatever instructions you're trying to give them. So if you shoot across the bow, you're shooting, traditionally a cannon, in front of the ship. So there's no way they wouldn't notice that. It's not going to hit some, behind the ship or far away. It's right in front of the ship. So someone is going to see that. So now, if they ignore you, well, at least everyone knows that they're aware. They're not going to say, "Oh, we didn't hear you," that sort of thing. That you've made a shot across their bow. Now, outside of the naval context, how do we use that? Well, it's kind of like a warning shot. Maybe if you're doing something and you're not sure if this is allowed or not, or if you're going to get in trouble for doing this, but then the other person gives a shot across your bow. They make it very clear, you keep doing that, you're going to be in trouble. That would be a shot across the bow, a warning shot. Bring a knife to a gunfight. So this is a famous line. I think it was a term before this, but I always think of the movie Untouchables with Sean Connery and Kevin Costner. And Sean Connery, the old Irish cop, tells this kind of rookie FBI agent who doesn't know the streets very well, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. If you're going to a gunfight, you don't need a knife. You need another gun. That sort of thing. So a knife to a gunfight is whatever weapon you have is inferior to the other side. Maybe it's hands against hands, but maybe the other side has a knife. Well, you better get a knife. The other side has a gun. Maybe you need a gun. That sort of thing. So it's basically upping the ante. So don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Good advice. Dodge the bullet. So to dodge is to, get out of the way. So to dodge the bullet, someone was shooting at us, but I jumped out of the way, I dodged the bullet. So obviously that's a war combat type idiom. How do we use that in the regular everyday life or the business life? The boss is making a decision. Someone has to do something that we don't want to do. So she's looking around and chooses one person. Okay, you handle this account, or you go handle this. Oh, I thought she was going to pick me, but I dodged that bullet. I'm not responsible for that. I get out of that duty or that assignment. I dodged the bullet. Knives are out. So what does that mean? Well, it means that everyone has kind of pulled out their knife and is looking to fight. Maybe there's blood, or maybe there's not blood yet, but be careful. The knives are out. People are getting ready to spill some blood to cause some serious injury to other people. So be careful. Knives are out. Now, in the business world, maybe people are making accusations. Maybe people are blaming other people. We lost this account because of your department. No, it was your department. You didn't do this. And there's all these accusations going back and forth. Sometimes someone's going to get hurt. Some department's going to get hurt. Maybe people lose their job. Whatever happens, be careful. The knives are out. Bury the hatchet. So the hatchet is a small axe. It's basically an axe for one hand. But it's got a small axe handle. So it can be used, if you're in the woods kind of clearing some trees, that sort of thing. But it's also a weapon of war, especially with the American Indians. I think you use the hatchet a lot. So to bury the hatchet, to bury, to dig a hole, put the hatchet in, and then put the dirt on top, means I don't need the hatchet anymore. I'm putting the war behind us. We're not fighting anymore. I buried the hatchet. So what does that mean in everyday life? Well, I hated this person. I was at war with this person. But you know what? We buried the hatchet. We worked it out. Whatever the problems were between us, we've agreed to move on. Maybe we're friends now. Maybe we've just agreed not to fight. Either way. But we agreed to bury the hatchet. We're not going to fight anymore. We don't need the hatchet anymore. So maybe we're not friends, but we're not enemies anymore. Let's bury the hatchet. Similar to bury the hatchet is to beat swords into plowshares. So basically, especially going back in history, metal would have been valuable. So if you have metal that's made into a sword, but the war is over, there's no more war, you might reforge that metal into a plowshare. So basically into a plow for farming, agricultural tools. So that means okay, the war is over, we'll get rid of our swords, we'll make farming equipment out of them. So similar, kind of somewhat similar to bury the hatchet. To shoot from the hip. I think of Wild West movies, when they have a fast draw, quick draw, they're on the main street and they're looking at each other, it's high noon, and they go for their guns and they pull them out, and as soon as they clear the holster, they shoot. So they're shooting from the hip. Normally, they would pull it up right in front of them, get a good sight with using their eye to aim at the enemy. But if you're in a hurry, you're just going to shoot from the hip. And so your accuracy is probably not going to be as good. So if we're saying someone is shooting from the hip, maybe they're talking and they don't fully know what they're talking about, or they haven't fully investigated, they haven't done all of their research. She's just shooting from the hip. This is her initial thoughts or something like that. So this is often someone that's very aggressive. They're shooting from the hip. They're not waiting, to bring it up to aim fully. As soon as they clear that holster, they're pulling the trigger, putting rounds down range. So it could be a good or a bad thing. If you're shooting from the hip, you could get yourself in trouble because you don't know everything and you're not aiming very, very well. But maybe you're getting some early hits. Maybe because of your aggressiveness, that could be a good thing. Depends on the context. But you have to be careful if someone shoots from the hip. Uphill battle. So an uphill battle kind of makes sense. You're going uphill. So who has the advantage? The people on top of the hill fighting down are going to be at an advantage. If you're going up the hill, you have a distinct disadvantage. Something similar might be to choose your battles. So choose your battles. Don't just engage in the enemy whenever the enemy wants. You choose, I'm going to fight here, not over there. It's my advantage over here. It's a disadvantage for me over here. So maybe you don't like someone, in your company, in your office or something like that, but you can't fight them on everything. Gee, I could make a big argument about this, but I'm afraid I might lose, but I'm going to wait until they make a mistake, or I'm going to wait till I know that I'm right. I know that I'm going to win, and then I'm going to choose that battle. I'm not going to fight every battle. A loose cannon. A loose cannon is someone who basically, when they shoot, who knows who they're going to hit. A loose cannon is somewhat similar to shooting from the hip. A loose cannon, who knows where they're going to go. They might attack over here, they might attack over there, they might hit here, they might hit there. Who knows? Watch out, they're a loose cannon. They might come after me, they might come after you. Who knows what they're going to do? They're a loose cannon. To close ranks. So if you think of a military formation, maybe the soldiers are kind of spread out, but then they're given a command and they close ranks. They get very close together. So what does this mean in everyday English? Basically, if people are closing ranks, they're kind of defending themselves. So gee, I know something happened over there, but I asked so-and-so, they wouldn't talk to me. I asked this person, they wouldn't talk to me. I asked this other person, they wouldn't talk to me. They're closing ranks. They're not talking to anybody. No, they're not talking to any outsiders. I don't know what happened. I know something happened there, but I can't figure it out because everyone closed ranks. They're not telling anybody. So this could be a good thing, but often we use closed ranks if we think like there's kind of a cover-up. Something happened here, maybe something illegal or unethical or something maybe embarrassing. Maybe it wasn't illegal, but something embarrassing happened. But they closed ranks, nobody is talking about it, no information's getting out. Speak softly and carry a big stick. So this is usually attributed to President Theodore Roosevelt, who was president in the United States around the turn of the 20th century. And this was how he described his foreign policy. That he didn't talk a lot, but if he did, then people would listen. Arguably, the U.S. is kind of at the other end of it now, speaking a lot, but not having a very big stick anymore. But to speak softly, but carry a big stick. I'm not going to say a lot, but when I do, you better listen, because I can be dangerous. But I'm not going to use it a lot, which makes it even more dangerous, right? To bite the bullet. So I think it wasn't until the early 20th century or maybe late 19th century before medicine, doctors had invented anesthesia. So up until that time, if a soldier was injured on the battlefield, they were wounded, oftentimes the surgeons would just cut off a leg, cut off an arm. I mean, there wasn't a lot that they could do. They didn't have antibiotics or antiseptics or anything like that. Whatever surgery or operation the doctor was going to do, the soldier was awake or the sailor was awake. So what would they do? Sometimes they would have like a strap of leather that they would bite on, or sometimes they would say they would bite the bullet. So they'd give them a bullet that they would put in their mouth and kind of bite down because the pain was so unbearable of the surgeon doing whatever the surgeon was doing, maybe taking off a limb, something like that, severing a limb. If you haven't watched our video on sever, this would be a good time to go check that out. The doctor might sever a limb, sever the leg or sever the arm. That would be excruciatingly painful for the soldier, of course. So they might bite down on that bullet. And there are reports of like the bullet actually basically denting, having an impression of the soldier's teeth on it, because it was such force, which is kind of crazy to think about. So what does it mean today? Well, today it means doing something that you don't want to do. Kind of, we might also say face the music. So okay, I made a mistake, but you know what? I got to bite the bullet and go tell my boss about it. Or I got to face the music and go tell my boss about it. I'm going to bite the bullet and just do it, get it done. And it could be my mistake, or maybe I'm being blamed for it or whatever. But I've got to bite the bullet. I've got to do something that I don't want to do. Or it could be something else, like, gee, I should have bought something last year, bought a house last year when the prices were at this level, but now they're up at this level. But you know what? I think next year they're going to be even higher, so I'm going to bite the bullet and buy it now, even though I regret I didn't buy it before when the prices were lower. But I think it's going to be worse later, so I got to bite the bullet. So to do something unpleasant. Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So Horseshoes is a game, like an outdoor game that you play with a horseshoe, and you throw it and you try to put it on a stake, so it goes into the hooks around the stake. Now, when you play horseshoes, even if you don't hook the stake, you get it close, I think it's the whatever horseshoe is the closest at least gets a point. So close does count in horseshoes. In other sports, close, of course, doesn't count. If you're shooting at someone and you're close, it doesn't count. But with a hand grenade, it does count. Hand grenades will go off. They will cause great bodily harm to anyone nearby. So close is good enough. So we'll say close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So in modern everyday English, when would we use this? Well, gee, I was close. I almost made the sale. Great, but close only counts with horseshoes and hand grenades. The fact that you were close to making the sale or you were far from making the sale, at the end of the day, it doesn't make a difference, right? You didn't make the sale. Keep your powder dry. So if we go back, 200 years or more, we had muskets where they didn't have, bullets as we have them today. They would have the projectile, maybe in one bag, and then they'd have another bag of powder. So they'd have to load the musket with both. But if the powder gets wet, it's useless, at least for right now. So how do we use that in the modern everyday English or business English context? It means, even though we have powder, even though we could say something or do something against someone, you know what? Maybe now's not the best time. Maybe we need to choose our battles. So keep your powder dry. Don't attack now. It's not the right time for whatever reason. Keep your powder dry, and next time we'll be ready. Something similar is arrow in the quiver. So a quiver is basically the long canister where you store the arrows. An archer might put them on the back. So they shoot one arrow, then they pull out the next, and then shoot that one, etc. And so to have an arrow in the quiver means I have more ammunition, kind of like I've kept my powder dry. I'm ready in case it goes to war, in case we need to do something. So both are kind of like, okay, hold on, don't shoot yet. Let's wait, when our time is right, but keep your powder dry, be ready, and keep an arrow in the quiver, be ready. Lower your sights. So lower your sights, literally would mean like maybe we're shooting too high, we need to lower the sights, otherwise we're not hitting our target. In business English or everyday English, it would mean, maybe we're aiming too high. So you know what? I want to sell that $10 million contract to this company. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You need to lower your sights. They've never even made a contract with us. They're not going to give us a $10 million contract as our first contract. But maybe they'll give us that $1 million contract or a $500,000 contract. You need to lower your sights, lower your expectations. I expect to get this position or this payment in my new job. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Maybe that's not realistic. Lower your sights, and maybe you'll get that position or that salary or that sort of thing. So to lower your sights, have more realistic expectations. All right, hopefully these business English idioms for war have been helpful for you. If they have, then time to conquer that like button and make it ours. If you enjoyed this video, check out some of our other videos. You might like them even more. Work hard today and enjoy tomorrow.